His tenants kept disappearing, their rent was the last thing they ever paid. In the heart of Ibadan, where dusty streets met crowded markets and neon signs flickered above crumbling buildings, there was a row of nondescript apartments on Adeyemi Street. To anyone else, these flats looked ordinary: peeling paint, rickety balconies, the faint odor of mildew that clung to the walls like a secret. But those who lived there, or tried to, knew better. Oluwasian Oladipo, known to locals simply as Mr. O, owned the entire block. He was polite, impeccably dressed, and had a laugh that could put strangers at ease. On market days, he strolled through the streets with a crisp white agbada, greeting everyone, nodding at children, waving at shopkeepers. But behind the courteous smile and neatly combed hair, there was a darkness that no one suspected until it was too late. It began with whispers, tenants who hadn't been seen in weeks, their belongings left behind as if they had vanished overnight. Lagos street rumors spoke of families moving away suddenly, leaving rent unpaid, but in Adeyemi Street, it was different. There was no moving away. There were no farewells. Just silence. Late one evening, Adetela, a young nurse, arrived at the small flat she had rented from Mr. O. She was new in Ibadan and desperate for a place near her hospital. The rent was suspiciously cheap, but she shrugged it off. It's only for 6 months, she told herself, and I need something affordable. The apartment was dim, smelling faintly of disinfectant, but otherwise ordinary. Mr. O handed her the keys with a bright smile, reminding her, no one disturbs the other tenants. Pay your rent on time, and you'll be safe. The words were casual, but something about the way he emphasized safe made her shiver. The first nights were uneventful, until the shadows began. Adetola would wake in the middle of the night to the sound of soft footsteps outside her door. She chalked it up to the old building settling, until the night she heard muffled voices, a heated argument in hushed tones. She peeked through the gap in her door and saw a man, another tenant, being dragged down the hall. She froze. The man didn't scream. He didn't resist. And when she blinked, he was gone. The next morning, the building was calm, almost too calm. Mr. O greeted her at the gate, his smile unwavering. He probably had an emergency, he said smoothly. Nothing to worry about. Rent is due tomorrow, right? Adetola's unease grew, but what could she do? She needed the flat. She ignored the feeling gnawing at her gut, until she realized she wasn't the only tenant experiencing this. Across the street, a street vendor whispered about a family who hadn't been seen for a month. 2 doors down, a young man claimed his neighbor's room had been empty for weeks, yet the lights flickered at night as if someone was inside. And then she found it, hidden behind a loose brick in her kitchen wall, a tiny notebook, filled with names, dates, and notes in Mr. O's neat handwriting. Most of the entries were crossed out, but one page was fresh: Adetola A, flat 3B. Rent received, 12,000. Next collection, 30/07. Status, pending. Her blood ran cold. Pending. She wasn't sure whether to leave immediately or confront him. Before she could decide, there was a knock on her door. A familiar, soothing voice. Good morning, Adetola. Rent day, Mr. O said. His smile was bright, almost comforting. She had no choice. By the time she opened the door, she realized she had stepped into a trap. The morning sun burned through the dusty windows, highlighting the peeling wallpaper of Adeyemi Street's infamous block. Adetola's hands shook as she fumbled with the rent money, but Mr. O didn't take it. Instead, he gestured for her to follow him down a narrow staircase she hadn't noticed before. What is this? She asked, her voice trembling. This is where I keep my accounts, he said softly. All tenants are documented, for their safety. His words were like honey over steel, sweet but dangerous. They descended into a basement unlike any she'd imagined. It was cold, damp, and smelled faintly metallic. Hundreds of small rooms lined the walls, each with a number painted in black. Some doors were open, revealing dark interiors. Some doors were closed, silently humming with a life of their own. This is where they are, she whispered. Mr. O tilted his head. Where they go to sleep, yes. Nobody leaves without paying their dues. Adetola's stomach churned. These weren't just apartments, they were cells. She realized with horror that each missing tenant was hidden here, alive but trapped. The whispers she heard at night weren't accidents, they were people begging for help, crying in the dark. Panic surged through her veins. She tried to retreat, but Mr. O was quick, his hand on her wrist gentle but firm. Adetola, you're smart. You understand the rules. Follow them, and you'll be fine. Don't, and he didn't finish, but the implication was clear. The days that followed were a slow descent into terror. Adetola watched Mr. O collect rent, watching the ledger, marking names off, opening doors to the hidden cells, ensuring his guests remained compliant. She realized he wasn't just a landlord. He was a predator, a puppeteer of human lives, with the power of life and death in his hands. One night, she heard a whisper from the cell across hers. "Help me, please." It was the man she had seen drag the first night. His voice was hoarse, barely a thread of hope. Adetola knew she had to act. She started leaving tiny notes in the hidden corners of the block, messages she hoped the outside world might find. She memorized the layout of the basement, counting doors, marking exits in her mind. But she also knew that Mr. O's eyes were everywhere, his attention to detail horrifyingly precise. Then came the night she almost got caught. A shadow moved down the hall. He was faster than she expected, appearing behind her in the narrow corridor. "Curiosity can be deadly," he said softly, eyes glinting in the dim light. "Remember that." She forced herself to nod, heart hammering in her chest, and retreated back to her flat. But her resolve had hardened. She couldn't let this continue. Not if she valued her life, and not if she cared about the hundreds of tenants trapped in his death houses. Her plan formed slowly, painfully. She would survive. She would escape. And she would expose him to the world. Adetola bided her time for weeks, pretending compliance while secretly gathering evidence. Every night, she scribbled the names of the trapped tenants on scraps of paper, memorized key locations, and watched Mr. O's routines with obsessive care. The day of the next rent collection arrived. She had prepared meticulously, hiding the evidence in a small pouch inside her bag. Her palms were sweaty, but she forced a calm she didn't feel. Mr. O arrived at her door, smiling as always. "Good morning, Adetola. Ready for your final rent?" Her heart raced. She hadn't called this a final collection, not yet. "Actually," she said, forcing the words, "I think there's a problem with my payment. Could we discuss it?" He raised an eyebrow. "Of course. Step into the office." She followed him down the familiar staircase, deeper into the basement. Every step echoed in her ears. The hidden cells loomed like silent threats. She could hear the faint murmurs of the trapped tenants, some crying softly, others praying. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a small chair. She obeyed, heart in her throat. As he approached, she released the hidden pouch onto the floor. A small, portable recorder began to play, capturing his every word. Cameras she had secretly installed in the corners of the basement flickered to life, transmitting live to her laptop hidden upstairs. Mr. O froze, realization dawning in his eyes. "Clever," he whispered. "Very clever." Adetola didn't answer. She focused on opening the first cell. Tenants stumbled out, eyes wide with disbelief, shaking but alive. The sight stilled her resolve. Police sirens wailed in the distance. She had called ahead, leaving detailed instructions and evidence for the authorities to follow. Mr. O attempted to flee, but the building's labyrinthine basement, once his domain, became his trap. Officers surrounded him, weapons drawn. The man who owned death houses was finally caught. The tenants were freed, many collapsing in relief, some crying uncontrollably. Adetola stood outside, watching the chaos, tears streaking her face. The horror she had endured was over, but the memory of the silent cells, of the darkness behind polite smiles, would never leave her. And in the aftermath, Ibadan whispered of Mr. O, the landlord who charged rent with death, a man whose polite greetings masked a monstrous secret. But thanks to Adetola, the city finally knew the truth, that sometimes, the rent paid is far more than money, it is a life. Like and subscribe for more amazing African folktale and true crime.